Think back to a time you felt that, intense spark of love, that incredible high, maybe the feeling that this one person was just everything. Or even that sharp ache when you missed someone. It's such a fundamental part of being human, isn't it? And today we're not just going to talk about those feelings. We're diving deep into the science behind them.
Exactly. Love is amazing fodder for poets and artists, but it's also this powerful biological and psychological force. So we're going to unpack the science, what actually triggers these feelings, and, well, what helped those initial sparks maybe grow into something lasting.
And we've got some really fascinating sources to dig into. We'll be looking at scientific papers on like the neurochemistry of love.
Uh-huh. The brain chemicals.
Yeah, and also how our emotions get tangled up with our partners. Plus, we're drawing on insights from the late Dr. Helen Fisher. She was a brilliant biological anthropologist who really pioneered understanding love scientifically.
hmm She did amazing work. So our mission today is really to get past the mystery a bit. Look at the core scientific reasons why we feel love so strongly and what actually helps relationships endure. Hopefully you'll find some surprising facts and get a clearer picture of this whole thing.
Okay, let's jump right in. Why do we feel love? Starting with the biology, it sounds like there's a whole cocktail of chemicals involved.
That's right. A real symphony, as you said. And our sources point to a few key players, neurochemically speaking. First up, dopamine.
Dopamine, okay, that's the reward one, right? Like when you eat chocolate or win a game, makes you feel good, want more.
Precisely. Now map that onto falling in love. Dopamine fuels that reward and motivation, which translates into, well, euphoria. That feeling of boundless energy and that intense laser focus on the person you're falling for. Your brain is basically screaming, hey, this is good. Pay attention.
That clicks perfectly with what Christophe Coquet mentioned talking to Dr. Fisher. He said early love felt like the world was in fluorescent color.
Fluorescent color, I like that.
Yeah. Less need for sleep, constant excitement, can't stop thinking about them. It just sounds exactly like a dopamine surge taking over.
It really does. That intense focus, the obsessive thinking almost.
That's right.
It's not just romantic fluff, it's your dopamine system prioritizing this new bond. Our
Mhm.
biology is really pushing us towards connection.
Okay, so dopamine is the intense high. What else is in the mix?
Well, then we have oxytocin,
Ah, yes, the love hormone, her bonding hormone, gets a lot of attention.
and it deserves it. Oxytocin is crucial for bonding, for attachment. It's linked to feeling trust, calmness, that sense of security with someone, enhanced intimacy. It's the glue, in a way.
Makes sense. And the third one mentioned was vasopressin. Is that similar?
It's also involved in bonding, yeah, but it seems especially important for long-term pair bonding,
Yeah.
regulating social behavior. Research suggests it plays a role in promoting more enduring, stable relationships, maybe even monogamous ones. Think of it as the commitment chemical, perhaps.
Okay, dopamine for the excitement, oxytocin for the closeness, vasopressin for the long haul. Simplified, maybe?
A bit simplified, yes, but it gives you the basic biological picture. But relationships are obviously more than just chemicals firing, right? How does this biology play out in the actual dynamics between people?
Good question. That leads us to the psychological angle, I guess.
Exactly. And specifically, this concept of emotional interdependence. One of our sources really digs into this. The idea is that in close relationships, your emotions, your well-being, they start to depend more and more on your partner's behavior and their feelings. It's about how your emotional worlds connect.
Okay, so it's not just what's in my head, but how my feelings get linked to my partner's. The article mentions several theories. Arriaga and Agnew, Burchide and Amisalorso. What's the main takeaway?
Well, they all kind of point to the same thing.
Hmm.
As relationships grow, we develop expectations about our partner, not just what they'll do, but how they'll react emotionally. And this creates this pathway for emotions to travel between partners. If one person's stressed, the other often feels it too. Arriaga and Agnew talk about how relying on a partner for important needs really builds this interdependence.
That makes total sense. Everyone's felt that, right? Your partner has a terrible day and suddenly your mood tanks too.
Exactly. It's like your emotional atmospheres merge. And this ties into bigger psychological ideas like emotion contagion, like catching a yawn. You can sort of catch anxiety or happiness from someone close. And there's emotional assimilation, mood contagion. Basically, your feelings start to align over time because you're so tuned into each other. Closeness just ramps up these effects.
The article also talks about emotions becoming linked over time, using terms like ties, emotional connectedness, coordination. Sounds like you build this shared emotional landscape.
Precisely. Like an inside joke or a song instantly triggers a shared feeling. That's your temporal interpersonal emotion system, or ties at work.
Right.
Repeated interactions weave your emotional responses together. But here's a really interesting twist from the research.
Oh.
This emotional interdependence, it might not be this fixed thing that's just there in all close relationships. It seems to be pretty context dependent.
Context dependent. How so?
It means how linked your emotions are can change depending on the situation, the specific feeling, even the day. And surprisingly, the research hasn't consistently found that things like personality traits or even how close partners say they are strongly predict how interdependent their emotions actually are moment to moment.
Wow, that's counterintuitive. You just assume closer couples more linked emotions.
You would think. But the data's tricky. The article also mentions emotional convergence, the idea that partners get more similar emotionally over time. Some studies find it happens and it helps stability, but others, not so much. The evidence is mixed. So just feeling emotionally connected might not be the key to staying together long term. Maybe it's more about conscious effort, shared goals.
Okay, so biology gives us the initial fuel, but the emotional connection is more complex and maybe less predictable than we think. Let's shift then. If it's not just the initial rush or even that deep emotional link, what does science say helps people stay together for the long haul?
Right. Because clearly it takes more than just dopamine. And that emotional interdependence source actually looked into this. They ran 3 studies trying to figure out what factors might influence that interdependence and if those factors relate to relationship length.
And they use different methods, right? Lab observations, daily diaries.
Exactly. A mix of methods to get a fuller picture. They looked at things based on transactive goal dynamics theory, basically, how couples' goals become intertwined.
Okay, so what did they find about things like living together, how long they've been dating, commitment, time spent together, feeling like your partner is part of you?
Well, the findings were interesting and sometimes surprising. Like we hinted, living together did seem linked to more shared emotional intensity, especially in those highs and lows. But relationship length, how long they'd been together. Across the studies, there wasn't a really consistent, strong link to how emotionally interdependent they were day to day.
Still finding that surprising. You just expect more emotional attunement over time.
You would, but the data didn't strongly back it up. Same with commitment levels, not consistently tied to interdependence. However, the amount of time spent together did show some connection, especially with shared positive feelings in daily life, and also with those peaks of emotion. So maybe shared experience matters there.
Mhm.
But feeling like your partner is part of yourself, that didn't show a clear link in this research either. The daily emotional dance is complex.
Okay, so those specific factors have mixed results. Let's bring in Dr. Helen Fisher again. She talked about slow love.
Yes, slow love. She noticed a major trend. People getting married later now. This gives them more time before that big commitment. She called it pre-commitment time.
Time to really figure things out. Yeah.
Exactly. And she looked at UN data across loads of cultures
Wow.
and found that longer courtships and later marriage actually correlated with a higher chance of staying together. It supports this slow love idea. Maybe not rushing into marriage gives relationships a better foundation for stability.
Makes sense. What about online dating? That's changed everything. Does she look at that?
She did. Her research for Match.com found people meeting online often are more likely to be employed, have more education, and crucially, are often actively looking for commitment. But she saw online sites mostly as just introducing sites when you meet face-to-face. Her view is that our basic biology, our brain's algorithms for attraction and compatibility, they just take over.
So tech changes the meeting place, but not the fundamental human connection process.
Pretty much her take, yeah. And speaking of fundamentals, her research consistently showed what people value most. Any guesses?
Maybe attraction. Shared interests.
Those matter, but the top 2, consistently, respect and trust. Humor, making time looks important, yes. But respect and trust were seen as the absolute bedrock for something lasting. It really shows that beyond the initial spark, how you treat each other is key.
Respect and trust. That resonates. It brings us back from just brain chemistry to, well, character and behavior. Now, Dr. Fisher also talked about different brain systems for love, right? Not just one big feeling.
Exactly. She identified 3 distinct, though interconnected, systems. There's the sex drive lust. Then there's romantic love, that intense focus, elation, craving. And finally, deep attachment, that feeling of calm, security, union with a long-term partner. Yeah, and crucially, she stressed these aren't stages you have to go through in order. They're separate systems. They can operate independently.
So you could feel, say, deep attachment to a long-term partner, even if the initial intense romance has faded, or feel lust without romance.
Precisely. And she pointed out the evolutionary benefits of that deep attachment system go way beyond just making babies. Having that stable partner is linked to living longer, being healthier, especially as we age. She even touched on why rejection hurts so much. It activates brain areas linked to addiction, craving, even physical pain. It shows how vital these connections are to us.
It really drives home how deeply wired love is in all its forms. Okay, so pulling this all together, love is this incredible mix of biology and psychology. We've got neurochemicals like dopamine driving that initial intensity.
Uh-huh, the fireworks.
And then there's the complex weave of emotional interdependence that develops, though maybe not always predictably.
Right, the connection.
And for lasting relationships, it seems things like respect, trust, maybe taking that slow love approach Dr. Fisher mentioned, spending quality time together, those seem incredibly important beyond just the initial feelings.
That sums it up nicely. It's biology, psychology, and conscious effort, perhaps. And it leaves us with a thought, doesn't it? This idea of slow love. If having more pre-commitment time helps, as Dr. Fisher suggested, could it be that our digital age, even with online dating, might actually be maybe accidentally encouraging more conscious choices, leading to potentially more stable partnerships in the long run, despite the fast pace of everything else?
That's definitely something to chew on, is slow love making a comeback through technology. We hope this deep dive gave you some new perspectives. We encourage you to think about your own experiences. What does the science we talked about today reflect in your life? What do you find truly sustains the love for the important people around you? Definitely worth pondering.